On April 26, 2003, avid climber Aaron Ralston was out hiking in the Blue John Canyon in eastern Wayne County, Utah. Now, during this hike, as he was descending the stretches of a slot canyon, a suspended boulder dislodged while he was climbing down from it, and it fell. Now, as it fell, it first crushed his left hand, and then it crushed his right hand, and also pinned it up against the canyon wall. Now, during this time, he had no way to call for help. He had not informed anyone of his hiking plans, and he was literally stuck between a rock and a hard place. Over the next 5 days, he slowly sipped the remaining water left in his water bottle, which was only about 350 milliliters. He also ate several of the burritos that he had left with him, all while trying to figure out a way out of this situation. But also during this time, he began to hallucinate, he began to dehydrate, his arm began to go numb, and he began to contemplate whether or not he was going to live or die. And in fact, he actually decided to record his last goodbyes on a video recorder that he brought with him. Fast forward to the morning of the 6th day, and Aaron Ralston decided to do something crazy and unbelievable. He decided to amputate his own arm by only using a multi-purpose tool, which included a dull 2-inch knife and some pliers. After roughly working on his arm for over an hour, he managed to amputate his own numb, decomposing arm and free himself from the canyon wall and the boulder. He then rappelled down a 65-foot sheer wall, hiked over 6 miles, where he ran into a Dutch family who then alerted the authorities, who came and rescued him by helicopter. This all took place 4 hours after he freed himself, and at this point he had lost 40 pounds, 25% of his blood volume, and his right arm. But most importantly, he lived to hike another day. Now, I want you to put yourself in that situation. You're out hiking and climbing. You get stuck between a rock, a very large rock, and a hard place. You start to experience starvation, dehydration. You start to hallucinate. You start to understand that you're likely going to die out there. You even start to record your own goodbyes to your family. And then at the end of this, you then realize that the only way out of this situation is for you to amputate your own arm with a 2-inch dull knife and some pliers. And you do all of this over a course of 127 hours, while at the end of it, when you free yourself, hiking over 6 miles for 4 hours until you are finally rescued. And the truth is, rescue is not assured. It just so happens that in this situation, you run into a family that calls for help. Now, the reason that I mention this story to you is because there's a popular motto in our culture today that tells us this. It tells us that God will never give you more than you can handle. But here's something that I want you to know about this motto. This popular motto of God will never give me more than I can handle. It's this. That motto is 100% false. There is nothing about that motto that is even remotely true or biblical whatsoever. Because if you read all throughout the scriptures, from the Old Testament to the New Testament, you will read about many, many people in the Bible experiencing hardships and troubles and being handed things that are just too much for them to handle. So how do you know that God will give you more than you can handle? Well, I want you to listen to a guy known as James. He not only knew Jesus Christ personally, he was also related to him as his half-younger brother. And in this letter that he writes to Jewish Christians about troubles, listen to what he has to say about them.
Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow, for when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing.
Notice the words when, any kind, joy, and endurance. When means that these troubles will show up at some point in our lives. any kind means that these troubles will show up in all different types of forms. And joy means that it is a sign of our hope in Jesus Christ for our future relief, and that this is a posture that we are supposed to be in when these troubles come. And endurance, what that is it is a test of time so that we will become more mature and developed in our faith. And the reason why is because immaturity and incompletion are not acceptable forms or long-term states to be in for the Christian. And notice what troubling times does for us. Rather than causing our posture to look inward for inner strength as if we can do everything on our own, instead what it does is it gives us a posture to focus and look upwards to God and rely fully on Him. Listen to what James says in the rest of this passage in verses 5 through 8.
If you need wisdom, ask our generous God, and He will give it to you. He will not rebuke you for asking, but when you ask Him, be sure that your faith is in God alone. Do not waver, for a person with divided loyalty is as unsettled as a wave of the sea that is blown and tossed by the wind. Such people should not expect to receive anything from the Lord. Their loyalty is divided between God and the world, and they are unstable in everything they do.
As you can see, there's a connection between wisdom and troubles. And here's the connection. God will use the troubles to teach us and develop us fully, and as we seek Him in those troubles, we will become wise in navigating this world. You see, wisdom is understanding how the world and our circumstances work and how to best navigate and live in them. And what God desires for us to do is to understand the troubles the way that He sees them and to gain another perspective on them. I mean, think about it this way. If you could understand the trials and the troubles that you go through the way that God sees them, how would you act differently? How would you believe differently? And most importantly, if you did know the reason that God allows these trials and difficulties to take place, would you still doubt that God has a purpose for them in your life? And as James continues in these verses, he also talks about the person who doubts or wavers. And what he explains is that to doubt or waver is to model an inconsistent attitude towards God because that person isn't trusting God with the troubles that are taking place in their life. You see, it's important not to allow our minds to become so divided that we begin to argue within ourselves by doubting if God can handle all of our troubles or not. You see, the wisdom that we ask from the Lord and that we seek, and the one that He so generously gives to us, what it will do is it will help us understand the troubles of life, and it will help us to trust Him through the midst of them. And we don't need to doubt Him because not only is He capable of handling all our troubles, He is also capable of bringing us through the troubles. You see, if God will give us more than we can handle, how do we know how it is supposed to be handled? Well, here's what I want to do. I want to look in 2 Corinthians chapter 12 real quick. You see, this is a letter written to the church in Corinth, and it's written by the Apostle Paul. And in the chapter before, in chapter 11, Paul had explained how he had experienced hardships and sufferings and difficulties so far in his life and ministry due to sharing the gospel. And at the beginning of chapter 12, he speaks of a vision of heaven that he once received. And after he had received this vision, in order for him to not boast about it, and in order for him to not boast about what happened, this is what he says next.
That experience is worth boasting about, but I'm not going to do it. I will boast only about my weaknesses. If I wanted to boast, I would be no fool in doing so because I would be telling the truth. But I won't do it because I don't want anyone to give me credit beyond what they can see in my life or hear in my message, even though I have received such wonderful revelations from God. So to keep me from becoming proud, I was given a thorn in my flesh, a messenger from Satan to torment me and keep me from becoming proud. 3 different times I begged the Lord to take it away. Each time He said, "My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. So now I am glad to boast about my weaknesses, so that the power of Christ can work through me. That's why I take pleasure in my weaknesses and in the insults, hardships, persecutions, and troubles that I suffer for Christ. For when I am weak, then I am strong.
Notice that Paul mentions a thorn in his flesh. And to this day, we really don't know what that thorn was. But here's what we do know about it. One is that Paul was not a big fan of it. And two, he prayed specifically 3 different times for it to get removed. But notice what the Lord said to Paul. The Lord said to him, "My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness." You see, this passage reminds us that we should not boast in our own strengths when difficulties or troubles come our way. And honestly, it's not like we can handle all of life's troubles on our own. Rather, we should allow the troubles of this life to humble us so that we do not become prideful in our own ways. You see, we need to remember that it is the Lord's grace and power that will get us through life's troubles. Because verse 10 really sums up what we should expect in life. Weaknesses, insults, hardships, persecutions, troubles, sufferings. I mean, if you look at it, this is something that everyone experiences. And just like I said before, it is a common theme that runs throughout all of human history. But for the Christian, when it comes to handling all of this, it is not our own power that will get us through. Instead, it is the grace and power of our Lord Jesus Christ who will lead us through life's troubles. So to recap, will God give you more than you can handle? Yes, absolutely. And will you enjoy it? No, you probably won't enjoy the troubles of this life. None of us do. But here's what you can know, and you can have assurance in, that when the trials show up and those troubles show up, you can consider it joy. That you can have a posture of joy, knowing that God is using these troubles to form you and to shape you and to develop your faith to make you look more and more like Jesus Christ each and every day. And also you can remember that when the trials and troubles show up, and as you navigate them, that if you seek God and you ask for wisdom, that He is generous enough to grant that to you. But you also need to remember not to doubt Him, but instead trust Him and the purpose of the troubles in your life. And most importantly, when they do show up, you need to remember that His grace is sufficient and enough for you to get through them, and that it is in your weakness that He is strong.